Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
Here we are.
Well, here we are. Where we were before.
Here we are again. That's right.
Here we are again where we are. Yeah. So
May 31st, just to put a timestamp, the end of May. I mean, so that's almost 90 days.
And this is the month where we both get older.
That's right. We both got older.
Yep. We got older. On April 30th, we were one age, and here we are, 31 days later, and we've advanced.
You know what my mind is just getting around though right now is for some reason when we went into the shutdown or the leap as we've embraced it as, when we started the leap, my vista for it was kind of June. In my mind, I kind of said, okay, so we'll set that out. And then, so my mind, I'm just noticing literally in the last 2 days that my mind is kind of like, okay, this is what we had. I didn't really have like a picture beyond that. It was just that I knew that in March, it wouldn't be until June that anything would even be, changing kind of thing, or that would be a reevaluation. And now I look at it, and what we're faced with is really, I think we're all, I am anyway, used to now this idea of being in one place and having, everybody's kind of shifted, not as much talk about pivoting and that kind of, if you're just now talking about pivoting, it's too late, right? I mean, it's really everybody's
I think you're behind.
You're behind for sure.
Yeah, I think you're trailing behind because it's just an experience of mine from previous downturns, not lockdowns. This is the first lockdown that I can remember in my life.
Yeah.
But certainly have had downturns. And I, since 1974, when I started coaching, I think there's been 7 that would be significant, for one reason or another. And I think the first 2 or 3, I didn't respond well to them. And then I began to realize that you can actually make these types of, slowdowns or stopping or whatever you want to call it, are actually a phenomenal opportunity for making very rapid progress simply because of what other people are not doing.
I agree. And now it's like this next, now I look at it, and this next 90 days, 3 months, quarter, as we look at it, is I don't have anything on the calendar. Like, I don't think anything, I don't think we're going to get back to full on like travel and stuff like that yet. And so that's at least September when things start to, open.
But you have virtual breakthrough.
I do. I love that.
So those are in the
that's
schedule.
what I mean by
those are in the schedule. Those are in the schedule.
That's what I'm exactly. But that's what I mean by this next 90 days now. Like the 90 days. This last 90 days has been about the pivot and the transition, and everybody, wondering what's going to happen, and everybody realizing, virtual gathering is really great, and everybody's kind of on board with that. And I think that the overall fear and stuff like that, I think, is for the most part a little bit less right now. And this next 90 days is really where we have the opportunity to really fully embrace the pivot, embrace the new.
So I have a question for you, because you've obviously been in contact with your regular the entrepreneurs who attend Breakthrough Blueprint. If you use the DOS framework of dangers, opportunities, and strengths, what would you say, just from your conversation, and you may be just putting it together as we talk here, what would you say is the biggest danger that has popped up in conversation?
I think that paralysis is probably one of the biggest dangers, is paralysis of not doing anything or not knowing what to do by, and really not being decisive in that, not letting go of, not embracing reality. If I look back at the,
or not noticing that reality has changed.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And not being clear about that. Not being clear about that. I find some people are still, going on an old model. They're still, their notion of what lies ahead is what they were doing before this happened, and they really haven't updated it.
Yes, and so I look at that, and so when I saw President Trump announced that there was going to be no international travel, cutting off Europe now, not just China, I knew that things would have to change, because I had 5 events scheduled between March and July 4th, including Toronto and London and Amsterdam, which is traditionally a big part of my year. I do this summer tour where I kind of stack the events back to back to back, and then spend some time in Toronto over the summer. And I started thinking, okay, well, that's off the table. And then you have this first thought of, okay, I've got to replace that revenue, because that's a lot of revenue that I'm going to miss out on here. And I started thinking, okay, so now what is it that is the outcome that we're creating with a Breakthrough Blueprint? What is the actual thing that people get from that? And is there a way that we can do it without the mechanism of gathering in the live event? And I thought, the real thing is the sharing of the ideas, the intimate communication, the small group. And I had been on some Zoom conferences where, I noticed they have the gallery view. And I thought, having that 9-person gallery view is the perfect size to see the faces of everybody. You can feel like you're making eye contact with them. And we could do the same thing. So I immediately decided that's what it's got to be. There's nothing else we can really do that would be better than that. So I'm going to get into action. We immediately had I had a room in my home converted to a little Zoom studio, and immediately started sending out invitations. I shot a video that showed what we were going to be doing. And, now I've done I've just done 3 or 4 Zoom events now in this 90-day window here. And so it's been a great experience, because out of it came the realization that, wow, you can really get the outcome, but it's so nice to be in my home. And I think people really love the fact that they can be in their home without having to travel. So I think that that's really the thing, the ability to, do something, take some decisive action. So the question you had asked was, what is the danger? I think that people face.
Well, I think the dangers, first of all, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and I've talked to, I would say 80% that I'm aware of have been on one or more of the 22 direct 2-hour replacements that we had during March, April, and May. And I would say that they have 3 uncertainties. One is uncertainty about the overall economy and, when do things completely open up? So there's uncertainty about that. The second one is uncertainty about their clients and their freedom to spend in the way that they've counted on in the past. And the third one would be uncertainty about their team and how, having not been, normally at work during the last 3 months, what's it going to look like? And I'm not saying that they're anticipating bad things in those 3 areas. It's an absence of knowledge. It's an absence of experience. So they don't have enough experience to actually formulate strategies. They don't have, and I would say there's a void. The biggest fear is that there's a void of things that we just don't know.
Yes. I think that's true, that there's, but part of the thing, what I saw initially, and I see it as a danger, is this sort of situation, this predicament that we get into collectively, is that in scary times like this, that uncertainty sweeps in, that the first order of business is to stop spending money. Okay, shut down forces down, shut down everything. We're not spending anything. Gather up, how much have we got? Gather up all the money and put some boundaries around it, kind of thing, right? We're cutting all unnecessary spending. We're doing all of those things, all completely natural things that are we're compelled to do. Then the next step is getting everybody into the boardroom to think, we need to make more sales. We need to secure more revenue, right? So the oddsness of that is kind of funny or ironic in that everybody's shutting down spending and concentrating on making sales at the same time, right? Which is kind of the funny thing. So you hear, we've talked about this idea of the purchasing department, right? Well, all the purchasing departments are on shutdown or on restrictions to necessary services, right? And yet the receiving docks are wide open and hoping that something comes to the receiving dock, right? And so the opportunity in that is to take your strengths and look for opportunities where other people could really benefit from your strengths. This is really what it's out of necessity. Often people are going to stumble into free zone opportunities that are tremendous, that they wouldn't have otherwise considered, probably, when the purchasing departments are open.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, in terms of 7 previous downturns of some sort, where things slowed down. I began to realize that you can make really good progress during normal times, but during scary times, you can make extraordinary progress.
I think that's
and
true.
So it took me the plane flight home from Chicago, in the hour before, Babs had told me that they had made a decision. You have to understand, in my company, Babs runs the company, and I run the program. So that's our division of labor, strategic coach. So, like at 4:30 on Friday afternoon, this was March 13th, Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it was Friday. It was Friday the 13th. Yeah.
Friday the 13th. I was told that she had just made a decision, and that there would be no more workshops until interesting your start of this particular podcast until June 1st. There's not going to be any. Yeah. So she, we were also operating that it was going to be March, April, May, but then probably in June we'd be able to go back to the full freedom that we had before, which is not turning out to be the case.
Right.
So on the plane ride home, the plane rides, all told about 3 hours start to finish, from my, Chicago office to my Toronto home. That's about 3 hours. So I got home, and I said, "Oh, this is one of those scary times." All right. What did we learn from the previous scary times? We go on the offense. We go on the offense. We do not go on the defense. So we begin to say, okay, what's everything we've learned in the last 2 or 3, maybe 5 years of new capabilities, but we're not fully utilizing them that relate to the internet, that relate to Cloudlandia. And I said, well, podcasts, let's really, really double down on podcasts. And the other thing is you're used to Zoom, so let's go full blast with Zoom. And then Babs with her team had put everybody on Zoom within 72 hours. Everybody was at home, fully engaged on Zoom. And the other thing is that for the first time, we've never done this before, we cut staff. And and I have to tell you, I had nothing to do with this. This was a decision on the company side. But 2 of our team leaders had said, we don't know what cash flow is going to be like over the next 3 or 4 months. And there's a lot of people that, we've been kind of carrying. They really haven't been doing the job, and we can't carry forward with these individuals. So it added up to about 1/6 of our company. And they were told on Wednesday that was over, and then they could apply for unemployment insurance, which is okay here in Canada. And then on the Thursday, we had a full company meeting, and everybody knew that they had made the cut, and and who had been cut and who wasn't going to be back. And then we started and we planned it, and we said we're going to switch over maximum to Zoom, and counting everything that we did, myself and other people, we did about 300 unique Zoom contacts as of today. So from March 14th until right now, we've done about 300 Zoom meetings of one kind or another. They came in various forms. I've done about 60 of the 300.
Right.
And I said, now, when you do these Zoom things, treat it as a learning experience. What are you learning about Zoom? Because I have 46 years history and 46 years experience of in-person, coaching. So I said, well, you've learned a lot over the last 46 years. Now, what part of your in-person learning is good for Zoom. And the first thing I came to is questions. You ask really great questions. They're just as good on Zoom as they are. So I just doubled down on questions. And very interestingly, I did 22 connections for, I had 40 or more people. And in every situation, I came up with 3 new questions. So 3 times 22, I've come up with 66 new questions.
Wow.
Dean, what I've discovered is that the ability to ask questions is almost unlimited.
Yes.
And I didn't know that before. That before.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I thought that there's a limit to questions. It's just that I'd never challenged myself to come up with new questions every time we had it. So that's a great takeaway for me. And my feeling is that if you can ask a great question, you've got a great presentation.
Yeah. That's so much, because then everybody can personalize the experience then, because it's 100% relevant to each individual rather than making statements.
Yeah,
which are going to be interpreted.
Statements are less valuable. Are less valuable. Now, I knew that in the real world, but in the virtual world, the stark value difference between questions and statements is much greater. It's much greater.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because that way you have a 100% individual reaction to a question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is the thinking that goes into their answer is new thinking.
Yes. And for a organization who, is completely built around thinking about your thinking, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what triggers thinking about your thinking. That's awesome.
Questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very, very interesting. The human brain, and I've studied this. I've gone into, some neuro research. There's a lot of neuroscience right now. And what I found is that the human brain can completely ignore and push off an answer, but it can't ignore a question. Mm-hmm. Even if it doesn't want to answer, once the question is landed, your brain will actually think about that question. And so what I found is the power of the virtual world is in questions, not in answers.
Mm. That's interesting because that's also the power of the 9-word email.
Yep.
That's funny that asking someone, are you still looking for a house in the beaches? is a different thing than...
Yeah. And say, who's this jerk that just sent me that question?
Right, exactly.
Am I still thinking about a house in the beaches? Can I tell you something, Dean?
Tell me.
There's a lot of them available right now.
I bet. Hey, you might get that full through driveway after all.
No, somebody took over the house behind and they remodeled it. So I don't think I don't think that's going to happen. But we're happy with the 3 we have.
We're happy with the 3. That's enough.
And I told you we've acquired a fox who now has really
regulated the squirrel population.
He's really put a check on the overpopulation of squirrels. It's a she. I think it's a she because I think she's got young ones back there because I never see. She never.
Well, the next thing you know, Dan,
it's all takeout. She doesn't sit down and eat. She takes out. So it's takeout. 15 in the last 2 weeks. She's gotten 15 squirrels.
Wow. Well, I'll have to show you a video that Ryan Dice sent me. There's a family of 7 baby foxes living
Wow.
under his deck.
Yeah.
At his house. They had, I guess, they had their what do you call them? Cubs, fox cubs.
Yeah, kits, or I don't know what their young ones are called. I think it's cubs, fox cubs. Yeah.
Cubs, yeah. So that little family of 7 cubs living under the deck at his house. That's something. That's what you got to watch out for that, Dan. That's what'll happen next.
Yeah, well, she seems to be domiciled elsewhere. So,
okay,
she comes up our driveway and she's all business. I have to tell you, this is one strategic coach focused fox.
Okay, she's got a mission.
She's got a mission, and she doesn't fool around. She doesn't stop. She doesn't dawdle or anything else. She just goes right on.
A follow-through implementer, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that they have unusual hearing because I can see her ears. Her ears are just moving around, and they have leaping abilities. So she'll come up close to one of our hedges. They're about 2 feet high. And she listens, and then she'll just take a leap. And usually she comes out the other side with a squirrel in her mouth. So she's very good. But she's not causing me any problems, so I'm leaving her alone.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking, Dan,
the interesting thing here is the conversation we're having. Okay, so. I've been at this for about 2.5 months now, the conversation over the shutdown. And I'm just noticing a radical difference of what the world is going to look like when full freedom comes back. When full freedom means you can go anywhere you want to and you can do it when you want to. So that's freedom for me. And what I feel is the amount of inequality in the world has radically increased. And it has to do with Cloudlandia and the mainland. If you think your only dangers, your only opportunities, and your only strengths are still in the mainland, you have lost ground during the last 2.5 months. If you think your best new, you're looking at it. Your best new dangers, opportunities, and strengths are in Cloudlandia. Then, no matter how scary those dangers are, you're ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. That is where that's the whole thing. This is the migration. This is the thing. It's all aboard. Get on the train here.
And I think it's the greatest adaptation of the new technology that I've seen in my entire life. How quickly certain people just adapted to a new technology. And really remarkable. And coach clients have been really, I would say, first class about this.
Yes. Yeah, I just think it's so, it is so exciting. There's so much, immediately you've just gotten so much more time. I feel this overwhelming sense of an abundance of time right now. Although you realize how fast it goes, first off, but the fact that now, because as I mentioned, my Vista was only till June, and then I knew you'd have to reevaluate. But now I think it's equally safe to extend that Vista to September, that nothing's really going to change between now and
here's
September.
The thing. You had sort of 5 that really constituted your summer season. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. 5 events.
Yes.
But there's nothing preventing you, even here on the last day of May, to sort of say, I think I'm just going to extend it to 10 before Labor Day.
Oh, yeah. No, this is...
And it wouldn't make any difference. And wouldn't make any difference. It's just a decision on your part and putting
Right.
the dates in the calendar, and then
Yes.
sending out a 9-word email to
That's right.
hundreds and thousands of people you know and say, hey, would you be interested in another breakthrough blueprint workshop on this date, on this date,
Yes.
on this date,
Yes.
on this date?
Yes.
And you're not drawing from a regional like,
No.
UK or Ontario
Yes.
or Western Europe. You're just putting it out to the world.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
So immediately, what the downturn has done has upturned the number of opportunities you can create.
Yes. I agree with you. And that's what's kind of an exciting thing is I can do specialist events, like really do one just about the before unit, for instance, or just about lead generation.
Yeah, well, you can take any one of the 8 profit generators, and you say, "Hey, we're just going to focus on number 5."
Yes.
We're just going to have a special workshop on number 5. We got 12 spots open, 9 spots open, whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you can't be on page 1, you can't be in the workshop.
Right. Pretty cool, right? Like I'm excited about the opportunities, and that's funny how you said that same thing. Is that I have been taking what has been the normal, the way we did the breakthrough blueprints, trying to do all of it as in one event, but it could be 3 days over 3 weeks, or 3 days over 3 months, or however it works. There's a lot of different ways to do that now, and that's what I'm excited about, is being able to you really embrace now, rather than trying to. I think this is an evolution. What we try and do is try and fit the old into the new, and now realize that the new, let's embrace the new and make it something that's even superior, because it would be superior to just focus on one specific topic, and when you remove the logistics of people having to travel, so you feel like you have to have all of it covered in one event, that you can now have the specialist events for a half day even, or
can I ask a question? How many, in the way that you looked at it from airline travel and hotel across time zones, what was your number of breakthrough blueprints you could do in a year?
Well, I was doing 9 breakthrough blueprints a year, and like I said, 5 of them in that 4-month period from March till July 4th.
But the truth is, you could do 18 of them in a quarter.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's true.
You could have a quarter when you're going to do 18 breakthrough blueprints.
Breakthrough blueprints. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could do it. You could do it in any quarter you want.
Yes. You're right.
And the total amount of time for the 18 would be probably 1/10 the time for the previous 9.
Yes. Yeah. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at that.
I did a London, just for London workshops, I did a sales presentation. I think we're up to 12. We've had 12 sign-ups already. And this was Thursday 2 weeks ago. So, it's about 17 days. 17 days? No, it's 10 days. 10 days since we did it. And we've had 12 sign-ups. And it might be off by 1 or 2. If I had done a live presentation in London, I might be up to 14, but I'm up to 12. But on the other hand, I didn't have to go to London. There was no flight. There was no hotel. We did from the time the plane landed in London till the time I got at the hotel. That's how long the sales presentation took on my part.
Right.
So I sent an email off to Paul Hamilton, who's our marketing. He's the team leader for the marketing team, and I said, why don't you just look at my schedule and pencil me in for 24 sales presentations for the next year? Usually in a good year I'd do 6. And I said, why don't you just put me in for 24 right now? Because the 24 will take me the amount of time that 3 out of the 6 would have taken. Yeah, so I've just gotten a 800% increase in productivity.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, this is exciting too, because now we may be able to get the elusive Paul Hamilton to a breakthrough blueprint.
Why don't we get the Paul Hamilton to come on and to talk about it? Yeah. Yeah. Get him at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, though. I really have to check out the reality of this possibility.
That's funny.
But I think he would be. Just out of sheer novelty, I think he would be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole I'm excited about the now really embracing it, because it wasn't, it was kind of like phase 1 was about replacing, stabilizing, normalizing. And now you realize that was I was underselling it or undersolving, that the actual opportunity is bigger than just supplementing or replacing or sort of mitigating what was lost. That's, I think, the way that people were coming at it, myself included, that I think that's you go on the offense, but the trigger was to minimize or replace what was a sense of what we're losing. Like same thing. We can't do workshops. What can we do, to replace the workshops? But now I see for this 90 days, it's like really embracing it now and looking at it as a new opportunity you just did the same. I heard Shannon, when you were on one of the Zooms with Shannon and talked about that the new opportunity is not geography, but time zones. And that's kind of my little interesting thing about time zones, Dan, is when I'm doing, I realize that 3 o'clock Eastern time is the most accessible time zone for the English-speaking sort of Western world, because that gets you from Hawaii.
Well, 8 o'clock,
all the way over
8 o'clock in London, 8 o'clock in the evening in London, which is still a good thing.
That's what I mean. And 8 a.m. in Hawaii. So you've got from Hawaii to Helsinki, all able to participate. Yeah.
3 o'clock. That's good.
3 o'clock Eastern if you want to do it overall. But so that's pretty exciting.
Well, the interesting thing is, the time zone, the whole concept of time zone was created by a Canadian. I don't know if you know this.
Did not know that.
And the 24-hour time zones was created by a Canadian, and it's in the 1850s, somewhere 1850s, 1860s. And it had to do with having to have standard time zones where everybody within a time zone would have the hour of the clock on the, if it's 12 and 12, shorthand on 12 and big hand on 12. And the reason is they had to standardize within a geographic zone what the train schedules were. It was all driven by train schedules. Otherwise, you'd have head-on collisions between trains. Okay, because the first tracks were just single tracks, but they had off tracks where if you knew a train was coming from another direction, a train could pull off on a side railing until that train. But you had to know exactly what the time was that the other train was coming.
Right.
And they had as many deaths from train wrecks in the 1850s and 1860s that the United States now has with traffic accidents. About 40,000 people were killed in traffic accidents last year. If you look at 2019, probably 40,000 Americans died in traffic accidents. It'll be lower this year because of the pandemic. People just But in the 1850s and 1860s, you would have train wrecks of just trains going 50, 60 miles an hour colliding with each other. And, the chances are probably everybody would be badly injured at least and probably killed by the train accidents. And it was because there was no uniform time system. So a Canadian put this together and he just, kind of said, this is the way it'll be around. It'll start in Greenwich, England, and Greenwich, England can announce he was very much of a lover of the British, and he said the British in Greenwich, at the observatory in Greenwich, will determine that'll be the beginning of a new day. And we're at, in Toronto, we're at 60 degrees west, I think, 60 degrees west. Out of 360, we're at the 60 degrees west. And so he established that. And it was one of those ideas that just immediately was adapted right around the planet, and they determined where the lines were, north and south. And that's the purpose for the time zones. But I would say that this event that we've experienced over the last 3 months has done the most in probably more than 150 years to people understanding time zones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's it's more important than zip codes. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm just profoundly impressed by the adaptation rate, certainly among my entrepreneurs, of how quickly they just jumped. They just literally jumped. And I've been talking to them about Zoom for years and years and years. And I said, you really ought to try this. And they said, problem is I don't have clients who use Zoom, and then you got to talk to them and everything else. He said, it's just a lot of bother. And all of a sudden it wasn't a bother.
Yeah, this whole, and now though, it's funny, even as we've been talking about it, I see now, is when, fully embracing it towards what's new. Like, it's funny how when we're making a transition, it's always that we think of the new thing as how it relates to the old thing. Like, when television started replacing radio, they would often think of the television like radio, and they would do radio shows on television.
Well, actually, the first shows, a lot of the first shows that were on television have been radio shows. Like Jack Benny was very popular radio, and he shipped over. Amos and Andy shifted over, and Sky King, which was sort of an adventure program. They switched over. So, I think you take what you know and you see if you can move it into a new realm.
I said to someone, Dan, that you remember this, I'm sure, in Toronto, the Learning Annex. Do you remember the Learning Annex catalog? And how before the internet, people were looking for social. It was really the social media kind of thing of the 90s and the 80s.
Yep.
And they had those catalogs all over the city, and with really interesting titles of courses.
Yeah, they had hundreds of learning courses.
Did you ever take a Learning Annex course?
No, you had to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a few of them just to see, what they were like, and that was a fun. It was a fun thing, I remember I took one in the early 90s on how to write a book in 7 days, which was an interesting course. And I still have the manual and stuff from it, but that's a long way from 90 minutes, Dan. But that's how.
But it took a competition to actually get you to actually do it. I remember the competition because it was launched.
I do too.
It was launched in London. Launched in London. Yeah.
And so now I was saying to somebody, there's a probably great opportunity to bring the Learning Annex back to the world, that model, of doing courses, having online, courses where somebody can zoom in and, take advantage of.
Well, you know what is very, very interesting discovery during this period that most parents have discovered that what a child actually needs to learn in a day takes about 3 to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So why
I think that's probably.
So why is my child going to school for 8 hours?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, and I think that
brings up a lot of questions of what they're being taught in the other 3 to 4 hours,
Right.
And my feeling is that there's been a significant blow to the part of the educational establishment that wants to turn children into something. People have ideas about what they'd like to turn children into. But they've been prevented from doing this for the last 2.5 months. And the children said, as far as reading, writing, and arithmetic goes, everything that a child needs to know, they can learn in about 3 hours. So what are they teaching during the other 3 to 4 hours? What are they teaching my child? And do I want my child to be learning any of this stuff? So the whole extra, if a child learns how to read, they learn how to write, and they learn how to do math, probably they're ready for the world.
I think you're right. Yeah. And that's really I think you could say that same thing, that most of the things that any worker gets done during the day could probably be done in 3 or 4 hours a day. Also.
Yeah.
That's really
But if they were really excited about the 3 or 4 hours that they got done, maybe they'd be willing to do another 3 to 4.
Exactly, yeah.
If it actually motivated them and they were thrilled by how much they got done, and the work was a lot easier. And I think it's very, very interesting. I'm putting together a whole series of ideas about what are people thinking? So you got millions and millions, hundreds of millions, probably billions of people who are thinking, what am I willing to put up with and what am I not willing to put up with when I can move freely? And I got a feeling, I think it's going to be totally surprising. I think it's unpredictable what people are making up their mind about during this period of time. I think people are making some very firm situation that, I was told that this was really important and I was told that this was really valuable, but the last 3 months told me that it's not important at all. So I'm not going to give any more thought or energy or commitment to that thing. I think there's just a lot of things that people have been told that they should be really spending their time thinking about and really doing. A lot of people said, that's not worth my time. And I think it's totally I think it's totally unpredictable how this is going to look like a year from now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is going to come from people embracing the new capabilities,
Yeah. Yeah.
And realize not just like looking at them as replacements, but looking at them as superior opportunities.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. I mean, we've done a couple of bank transactions during the downturn, and they had to do with the banks being sort of the vehicle by which the government provided money to small businesses. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was a free zoner, David Riley, who owns banks in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And we put in our application for the program in the United States that supports payroll, payroll protection plan, payroll protection program, PPP. That was it. And we put in our, application with David's Bank, and we got the money in 3 days. Bank of America, 3.5 weeks later, Bank of America hadn't actually even indicated that they got our application. Okay.
Wow.
Here in Canada, what the big banks like are in Canada, and they keep sending out these surveys. So how are you doing? What are you thinking about? No value whatsoever in their communication, and everything else. And the reason is they're so far out of touch with people's experience that they're hoping to get some information about what people are actually thinking about, And I think that really big bureaucratic organizations are going to be diminished as a result of the last 2.5 months because they have no capability of actually being in touch with what's happening to you. They put so many layers between you and the decision makers that I have a feeling all the big corporations, the big government departments, everything that's big and bureaucratic is flying blind right now. I don't think they have a clue what the experience has been like, and I don't think that they have a clue how they're supposed to be valuable after this is over.
I think that TV networks are going to be in that position too.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're starting to see now, like you look at, I saw David Spade, the comedian, in an interview where, his show, he had a show on a late night comedy show. Maybe it was on Comedy Central. I don't know what network he was on. But they were, he got indication that they weren't going to renew his show. And so he started doing one on Instagram, and, he gets 2 million people watch his Instagram show. And on cable, he was getting, 200,000 to 700,000 kind of thing, people. So he's got a bigger reach on his own on Instagram than through, and I think that same thing, John Krasinski, the guy from The Office, had some good news show that ended up, he started and ended up, CBS bought it.
Spotify just bought Joe Rogan's show.
Exactly.
For $100 million.
I know.
100 million. I mean, 100. Yeah. That's not 1 million. That's 3 more zeros. That's 100 million.
Yes.
And the reason is that he just talks things through that people can really connect with. Well, it's really interesting. I took a look at all the cable news television stations, which include the big ones, like CNN, Fox, and MSNBC and everything else. So you think, but there's a lot of local cable stations. So I got the entire list. and it was about 87. There's about 87 cable networks. And I said, what's the daily viewership of these 87 cable networks? And it turns out to be 29,500,000 people. That's not a lot. Given the size of the American population. But of course, if they're watching one cable station, they're not watching the other 86. So it kind of, in a certain sense, it makes sense. Donald Trump tweets and he gets 30 million downloads.
Yes.
So Donald Trump, using Twitter, has an instant read from 30 million people that's greater than all the cable news networks in the United States.
Oh, that's amazing. That whole, that whole opportunity.
And, you know,
the one-to-one
they're going back and forth, and Trump is saying, you know, there's a section of the legal code that makes the social media platforms immune to litigation. In other words, if somebody says something on Twitter or says something on Facebook, you can't sue Twitter, you can't sue Facebook for what was said. But there's a section that's a government article, and he says, you know, I'm just issuing today an executive order which releases that, and now Twitter and Facebook can be sued. Because they have to decide, are they a platform or are they public?
Yeah, they can't have it. They can't have it both ways. That's true.
No. Yeah, and it's kind of like, and somebody said, well, you know, I mean, they should be able to, they should be able to make some sort of, judgment about whether it's appropriate, this thing. And I said, well, you have to understand the difference between a platform and a publisher. So as far as I know, the Toronto Hydro Company is a platform. In other words, they deliver electricity to your home. Mm-hmm. And I said, but, so-and-so at number 105 has some really radical views about something. So the electric company decides that they don't get any electricity.
Mm.
I said, that's the difference between a platform and a publisher.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. It's like an airline says, anybody who voted for so-and-so in the last election, you don't get to fly. Well,
please get off the plane.
Please get off the plane. And we know who you are. We know who you are. We've checked the records. It's on your file. And we don't want to name names, but if you don't voluntarily,
but we have a list. We have a list, and you are on our list.
You're on our list. Well, that's the difference between. See, publishers can, they can accept or deny anyone they want, but a platform can't. Facebook has the protection of a platform. Twitter has the protection of a platform, but they're making judgments about what can be on. I say you can't do that. If you're a platform and you have legal immunity, you're a platform, but you can't. You can't make any judgments. So it's a very, very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It's a Supreme Court. I mean, it's either a Congress or a Supreme Court decision on this, and I would prefer if it was Congress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are in interesting times, as they say.
Yeah, well, it's this is These are Cloudlandia issues.
Yes.
Yeah, which is only 6 weeks. We're only 6 weeks away from the launch of Welcome to Cloudlandia.
I'm excited. I am
too. I think we should be. I think we should be strict about this. I think we should get our full 3 years in on the Joy of Procrastination.
I do too, and I think that this that's good. Let's hold each other to that because we do go off on those tangents. But I had been looking back and have some thoughts about about the joy of procrastination. So next, let's send off the joy of procrastination with a bang. And let's, really get the essence of it in these last episodes will be great. And then we'll go full force into Welcome to Cloudlandia. I'm very excited about that.
With a clean conscience. Completely clean conscience. Yeah.
That's right.
That we haven't shortchanged our Joy of Procrastination listeners.
Not at all. That's right. I like it.
Okay.